In this example, we will recreate a Cirque du Soleil circus tent to sort of highlight some of the more organic modeling tools in formz. Many different ways of creating organic shapes. One way is to start with a simple solid object, maybe a simple rectangular box, and we right-click on any object. We get the context-sensitive menus, so let's convert that to just a wireframe object, and then we'll move and push and pull the points and segments of that wireframe object to create the shape that we want. And with this geometry, we can use the frame tool, give it a specific radius, and we can create a tubular frame of any radius along the wireframe information. We can go back and modify that wireframe information by inserting segments, maybe deleting segments and moving the points around to reshape that. And notice that it does resolve the intersection of where all those tubes come together to a single point. We can cap a surface around any boundary of closed segments. Just simply click on the edges, and when we define a closed boundary, formz will interpolate a surface through the middle. And when we click on the segments, they don't have to all be of the same object. For example, I can create a spline curve down here. And now I just simply highlight the cap tool and start clicking the edges. And once the edges form a closed boundary, it'll automatically interpolate that surface for me. Now, some other ways of creating these organic shapes would be to use the Loft tool. We can loft through a series of segments. For example, I'll create an arc with a specific radius. And then I'll take that segment and move it up to the top of the pole. Now use the existing surface that we have there, and we can loft from the edge of that existing surface up to the edge of the arc that we created up there. And notice that when we bring that original surface back, we do have a nice tangent transition from one surface into the other. Using the stitch tool, sort of like needle and thread, we can sew the different pieces together to create it as one single surface object. Now in a top view, we'll take that one object, we'll mirror and copy that over to the other side. And with that, we can create the front entrance for our tent by lofting through additional profiles. Now, the profiles can be drawn anywhere using any of the drawing tools. We can even take the existing objects back here, and by highlighting the segments, we can do a derivative operation and derive a profile which matches that edge exactly. And we can loft through these wires. We can use it as we derived it, or let's have some fun here. We'll move a single point back just a little bit and reshape that just as if it was any other profile. And then going back to the Loft tool, we can loft through any number of cross-sectional shapes. We can also do a multi-branch loft. We can say that we want to branch in two different directions. And now when we do the lofting operation, you can see we can go through a series of controls over here, go through a series of profiles over there, and you can actually branch in as many different directions as we want. And that's how we create the two different openings for the front entrance of our tent. Now, as we bring the other surface back, we have the openings on the sides because we move the points back. Now, what if we want to change that? Let's say we change our mind. Well, we don't have to undo and reloft everything. We can actually move the points and segments of that lofted object after the lofting process and reshape it just like that. Now, towards the center of the tent, we'll look at some other ways of creating organic objects. We'll start with a pole in the center. There's many primitive tools to create a whole variety of different types of complex shapes as a single tool. We can also use the Formula Surface tool, which allows us to create geometry based on a mathematical equation. So we can put some sine or cosine functions in. We can do a wave pattern, maybe a Mobius strip, sort of a surface that folds back on itself. And in this example, what we'll do is a hyperbolic paraboloid. Type in the formula that we want, and there's our surface. Now I want to take that and move it up towards the top of the pole, and maybe slide it so that the corner point of the surface is right at the very top of the pole. Now in a top view, I'm going to make multiple copies of this. And what I'm going to do is when I make copies, I'm going to turn the Make Clones option on. What that allows us to do is make objects that are clones of each other. So what will happen is that if we were to edit or modify any one of those objects, all the clones will also update. For example, if we move a single point by maybe grabbing the corner point of this surface, moving that down, we change one, all the other ones update. It doesn't matter which one we modify, we move the other point over on the other object and they all update. Now this is also a Nurbs object, so this is a multi-personality aspect of the geometry in formz. So we can move the points and segments, we can move the control points of a Nurbs object to reshape it if we want. We can reconstruct the Nurbs surface by increasing or decreasing the number of controls. So you can see the surface looks exactly the same, but now we have added additional controls to add further detail to that surface if we want. We can attach and merge the different pieces together. So we end up with one single surface with one set of controls to modify that shape. Now if we bring the other surface back that we created previously, we can use the extend tool to extend the edge of this surface to the edge of the other one. Now for the center arena area, what we'll do is just create a solid block or a mass that represents that space, and then use that surface that we created as a trimming surface. So we can trim the solid object with that surface. And it chops off the top, and we can delete the bottom face. And notice that when you trim or cut objects, you still have access to the control parameters to still modify the shape. Now let's take all of our geometry and we'll give it a transparent surface style color, because we'll look at one more way of creating organic shapes. Instead of maybe defining profiles and lofting or doing a mathematical equation, what we'll do is just start off with a very simple rectangular surface and then just sort of stretch that and mold that into the shape that we want. So we'll grab that very simple shape and maybe move the controls up to the top of the poles, grab the corners down to the ground over here, and just take a very simple object and sort of sculpt it into a more complex shape. Here's a third way that we can edit these complex shapes. We can move the points and segments, we can move the Nurbs control handles, and here's the third method. We can pretty much move the surface anywhere that we want. Just move the cursor on any part of that geometry and click and drag, and you can reshape it that way. Let's go back to wireframe view, put ourselves in a perspective view. We'll turn on one final layer that has some entourage items such as people and some trees, and we'll do a render zone rendering. And notice that because these are parametric surfaces, we can parametrically map any type of surface style texture onto that mathematical surface.